Hello, Chalkdusters. We're here again to discuss the ins and outs and excitements and disappointments of the WTA Tour as it stands this week.
Hello, I'm DTM. Good to be here.
And I'm Katie. Thanks for coming back.
The week after a Grand Slam. A lot of players rested, and we are resting ourselves.
Yes, we are. We are here talking to you on location in jolly Spain. Well, jolly wet Spain, actually, if we must be honest. But I'm sure by the time next week's podcast drops, it'll be beautiful again.
So we better start with the action from 3 events, starting with Abu Dhabi this week, the start of the Middle East swing.
Yes, that was the biggest of the 3 events this week, wasn't it?
It was a WTA 500 event, 500 points up for grabs, and a surprise winner, a qualifier named Sara Bejlek, spelled Bejlek, but I think it's Bejlek, another Czechoslovakian, just 20 years of age, won 2 qualifying matches, won every match, including the final against number 10 in the world, Alexandra. Today, 7-6, 6-1.
Really? That was fantastic. That was a good top-all match. Qualifier beating Andreeva.
Yes, and she's gained those 500 points have propelled her over 60 places in the world. And she started just inside the top 100. And now she's shot up the rankings and she's inside the top 40. Amazing. She's from Czechoslovakia, and I think she's around 38 in the world now. Amazing. And she beat, I was thinking Clara Towson would have a good run, and she did indeed get to the semi-finals. But she lost to Bejlek 7-5 in the third set. So that was a really close match. But everyone in the top half took advantage because Belinda Bencic pulled out, a late withdrawal, which meant that the number 1 seed was no longer in the event, which made a clear pass. So the bottom half went to seeding. Alexandrova was the number 2 seed, but she didn't win the singles, she won the doubles.
Did she? Well done her. But well done to Bejlek.
Yeah.
Good for her. I love her underdog winning, and that's fantastic. Being rocketed up the charts.
Quite a short in height stature player, but a left-hander who plays what tennis people sometimes calls a lot of slice. So they like to say slice and dice, which basically just means a bit like your backhand. Sometimes she messes the opponent up just by playing short slices, and it caused a lot of problems this week.
And usually now you tell me that if you're shorter in stature, your serve isn't going to be very good, and your serve is the most important point of the match. So she seems to be getting around that problem.
Yeah, she won her matches this week, but remember, none of the top players were in attendance. So I mentioned Alexandrova and Bencic, both around 10, 11 in the world. Both had lost early in the Australian Open. So in comparison with the big guns playing in Melbourne, this was an opportunity for someone to make hay while both the sun shined in Abu Dhabi, but also while the big names weren't there. Sometimes scheduling, which we'll talk about when we come on to the other events this week, scheduling makes a big difference if you want to maximize your points. Playing when other big names aren't playing, obviously, is one way of being, the potential of doing well is greater, clearly.
Absolutely. The early loss in one tournament actually has an advantage in the next tournament because you've got time to get there, and you might have time to get there where other players might not either have time or the desire to get there. We've had a look at that, and we'll have a chat about that later.
Yes. And so Abu Dhabi was also really great for Olivia Nichols. I mentioned doubles last week. Olivia Nichols is our top doubles player as Brits, and she got to the final with her Slovenian partner, and unfortunately they just lost a very tight final to Alexandrova and Joint, who are singles players who just almost a rookie pairing, really. And Olivia Nichols will be gutted because the difference in prize money between winning the doubles and losing was £9,000. So as a pair, they would have won £44,000, but as runners-up, they got £27,000. They have to share that. So those good with the maths, the difference was about £9,000. If you're playing in your clubs in the coming weeks, probably indoor at the moment, given it's February, but imagine playing a tiebreak and putting £9,000 on one tiebreak.
That's a lot of pressure.
And for someone who's only won, just under $1 million for nearly 10 years' work, quite a big pressure tiebreak, and unfortunately they lost it. So still good points and just outside the top 20 in the doubles rankings.
And just the beginning of the season for her, we've got to support our Brits and have some high hopes for her this year.
Yes, look out for her, especially at the big Grand Slams, the doubles. Olivia Nichols either in the women's doubles with her Hylekova partner,
For you to say,
or the mixed doubles where she tends to play with possibly another British man, maybe Neil Skupski. It just depends. But she's done well this week getting to the final. So the other two events were both 250 events, and those that have been following the news are sure to be aware that two Brits, one in Ostrava, Czechoslovakia, and one in Transylvania at the Transylvania Open in Romania, both got to the final. Katie Boulter and
Emma Raducanu.
So we're going to talk a little bit about scheduling. So I have been saying for a while that it's far better to get to the latter stages of a WTA 250 event, far better than losing in the first, second, third rounds of these bigger events, because in terms of points, what you take away from getting to a final or even winning a 250 event is superior to winning a couple of matches at a big event, but then losing.
That's why you've been saying if she was listening, which maybe she is, we just don't know. If she was listening, you've been saying to Emma, go and grab some points at some 250 events rather than trying for the bigger events and losing early.
Yes, and even the WTA 125 events, the rankings of the players that play in those events will tend to be between sort of 80 and 200. And even the WTA 250 events, the top seeds may well not even be ranked in the top 30. So Emma Raducanu was actually seeded number 1 in Transylvania this week, and her ranking going into the week was about 30. And Katie Boulter, because of her injuries last year, hardly playing, she dropped outside the top 100. She was going into the week about 117.
Wow.
And both having great weeks. So we'll start in Ostrava, Czechoslovakia, and again, an indoor event, so quite unusual, but no outdoor conditions to play havoc. Someone like Katie Boulter has a very, I'm going to use the word precise, every ball toss on the serve is precise to some degree, but she has a very high ball toss, very tall lady, young woman, and sometimes she loses consistency on her ball toss because of the wind, etc., outside.
Right.
And that can play havoc with her serve. Whereas indoors conditions, so that is an advantage to a lot of players, but she also likes the faster conditions, and she's got a big game.
Particular advantage for her then.
And again, none of the big names there, and she took advantage and she got through to the final, and she played another lady who has been ranked outside the top 100. In fact, she was 190 odd in the world only about 12 months ago, Tamara Korpak. So a very winnable final, even though it went 3 sets. Boulter won the last 2 sets very easily, 1-6-2.
Very good. So yet another of those games that I like to watch where she lost the first set and then won consecutive 2 and 3, which is quite common, more common than you'd think.
Yeah, we looked at the stats about when a player wins the first set, what percentage go on to win in straight sets, and it's only in the 60%. So it's roughly 2/3. So of the remaining third of matches that go 3 sets, it's very even. So generally, if it goes to 3 sets, the player who's won the first set wins half the 3-set matches, and the player who's won the second set wins the other half of the 3-set matches.
So it is not something to get too upset about, losing the first set, is what we're saying.
No, she did serve for the first set. I was watching it 5-4 up, and for some reason, she seemed to go AWOL for about 4 games and then got her head together and hardly lost another game.
Well done, Katie. Another Brit done good.
So she shot back into the top 100 on the back of those 250
Oh,
points.
that's lovely.
And is now in the early 80s, about 84th in the world.
For her.
She's a player who was ranked as high as 24 26, 27 in the world only 18 months ago or so. So she can get back into the top 50, I'm sure, quite quickly. But in terms of scheduling, February after a Grand Slam is a good time to earn points. And there are certain points in the season where the opportunities to do well as a slightly lower ranked player are fairly well known. This period between Australia and really the American hard court season in Miami in early March is quite an opportunity, really.
So let's talk about the third of the tournaments, and then we can talk about the scheduling, because that is, dear listener, I found it anyway fascinating.
Yes. Okay. Well, Cluj, I'm not too sure on the pronunciation, but in Romania, it must be well known to the Romanians out there. CLUJ.
It's got an airport. There you go.
That's where they hosted the Transylvania Open, and again, indoors. So an indoor court. And as I said, Emma Raducanu was seeded 1, and she lived up to her seeding, got to the final, played a marathon semi-final against a Ukrainian woman who's been in the news for covering her face in Vasley's sort of stars and
The one woman who was very heavily tattooed.
yes, but she had lots of glittery face,
yes.
and very passionate about sort of fighting the cause of
Well,
the
of course, you
Ukrainians.
would be, wouldn't you?
And she pushed Raducanu for about 3 hours, but Raducanu finally got over the line. But unfortunately, coming into today's final, she was a spent force.
Yes, she must have been exhausted. And she said afterwards that she hadn't been well. Now, I'm interested by haven't been well in that when I'm not well, I can't get out of bed. I could maybe get out of bed and get in a taxi, but I'm not sure I could get out of the taxi at Cluj, the taxi that was taking me to Cluj. I'm not sure I could get out of the shower and put my tennis kit on. I mean, so she says I'm unwell. She's obviously really well. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well enough to win on Friday over 3 hours, and then really struggled today. Lost the first 8 games, 2 love down, won a couple of games, but then it was all over within 15 minutes. Ana Caster is a long-standing Romanian, so she was desperate to win. She's 35 years of age. It's her last year on tour, which she's fated. And we spoke a little bit about her and the frosty handshake with Naomi Osaka only a couple of weeks ago.
We did. And we've got these two are, Emma Raducanu has Eastern European background.
Yes, her father's Romanian.
So she speaks Romanian. She spoke some Romanian to the crowd this week. They loved it. That went down really well. And so then you've got effectively 2 Romanian people in the final. So that was exciting.
Yes, and Caster was the number 2 seed. She's a very loved tennis player. Been around clearly over 10 years longer than Raducanu, playing on the tennis circuit. And she got a lot of sympathy. We talked about the reasons why she was annoyed with Osaka calling out between her serves, sort of talking out loud.
Yeah.
And she had the sympathy of the tennis community, really. Hence why Osaka apologised and hasn't been seen since on the court. Caster is one of those feel-good stories. You could tell she lost 3 games in the semi-final, 2 games in the final, and she really had highlighted this week.
She was a machine.
She will be one of those players that the tour will miss and her fellow pros will miss. Her whole family were there. She was hugging her sister and other family members, and so that was great as well for her.
So then, imagine the scene, dear listener. Here you've got Raducanu. She spent 3 hours winning the semi-final on the Friday. Today, she spent 70 minutes, and she's self-confessed not been well all week. Then coach, parent, whoever organises her schedule, comes and says, well done, Emma, that's all good. Now pack your bags, or I pack them for you. Jump in the cab, because we're off to Doha, which is next week's TA 1000 tournament. So 1,000 points up for grabs there. That's a big tournament. Now then, I did a bit of research on the travel schedule I gave her a couple of hours to get her some snacks, something to eat, drink, relax. And I said, if we're going to leave by 10 tonight, can we get to Doha and when? And it was, of course, you can get there, but you have to go via either Budapest or Bucharest.
Wow.
Yes. You are likely to have missed the connector to Budapest or Bucharest tonight. So you probably have to wait till the morning. Then take your flight from Transylvania to Bucharest or Budapest and then go to Doha. That's going to take about, if all the connections work really well, between 7.5 and 9 hours. But you've missed your starting, so you're going to have to start in the morning. So that's a long time, and you're not going to get there in the morning without fairy dust or a private jet. Which is, I did check out how much that was going to cost, and it was 40,000 euros.
So someone of Emma Raducanu's earning power, especially off court,
yes,
her and her team possibly would get a private jet.
They might invest in that, especially if, I've dragged myself out of bed and not very well anyway, and you just throw some money at it and go. But if you weren't of her sponsorship deal credibility, then if you're a communal garden tennis professional, that's going to be expensive. Well, not too expensive, but it's going to take a long time and it's going to be exhausting. And when you arrive, you are not fully refreshed.
Well, these are some real examples of players flying from Melbourne.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter where they flew to. Most will head towards the Middle East at some point. But Raducanu, obviously the winner, took a private jet.
We saw the photographs. Well, I was amazed by the photographs that she had her rackets behind her. They weren't in the hold.
Svitolina, semi-finalist, and husband were in first class, business class on a flight.
Yeah.
Not a private jet. So 10 places in the rankings difference. Svitolina's just got back inside the top 10. 500,000, £750,000 getting to the semi-finals at Australian Open, multi-million pound earning. It just shows you in terms of.
I question whether that's about money though, because you and your team going in first class or business, Melbourne to Doha, will cost. I'd be interested to know about the comparisons with the PJ, the private jet, but given that you don't have to pay per person for that, it might be close. They might have gone normal carrier pigeon style for another reason.
The Lisa Mertens and her coach, who's also partner, boyfriend, they were sat in economy.
Oh, well, that's just jolly sensible, isn't it?
I think they were at the front of economy, so they have the extra legroom like I do. But just interesting. Someone ranked in the 20s, someone ranked sort of number 3 in the world, number 10, number 20.
It might be about affordability, about attitude, might be about scheduling, as in the timing. Interesting. I also know, top little tiny piece of intel for you, is that I believe I'm right in saying Elisa Mertens' sister is a pilot.
Yes, so she might have.
Well, I don't know which airline she's a pilot for.
Yes, we did have that chat, didn't we, actually, at Wimbledon with her team.
Yes, we did.
Because we sat with her team in the corner. We've talked a little bit about the flying from one country to another overnight. And it really is an issue more for those players who are not direct entry. So if your ranking's high enough, you get direct entry into the event. So those that, like Raducanu, who have direct entry into Doha, they know they're playing in the first round.
And what day is that?
And that will be Sunday, Monday. And the scheduling of the tournament organisers will recognise the fact that Raducanu has played a final with Castella. They're both due in Doha to play a first round match, but I'm pretty sure they'll be in the second batch of first round matches.
Okay,
so they don't have to be there Sunday morning to play in Doha.
That's a good thing because you're not going to get there.
I mean, they're playing about 9 o'clock, from 9 o'clock British summertime. So they start play about 9 and go through till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I suspect they'll be playing Monday, which will allow them to travel. But for those players who are outside direct entry for Doha, and it was roughly, if you were ranked sort of 50 or higher, you're having to qualify.
My Lord.
So we saw a couple of namesakes. We've mentioned Katie Boulter, namesake of yours, Katie.
Yes.
But also a very memorable tennis name, Katie Volinet, playing in Strava. So the two Katies played each other in the semi-finals.
Yep.
But the day before, Katie Bolinets played Alicia Parks. And I'm quite interested in Alicia Parks because she's one of the few players on the tour that have adopted DTM's two first serve strategy more often than not. She's a big, tall, big hitting American, and she often hits the two first serve policy.
Good. She has been listening to this pod. Well done.
Unfortunately,
Dear.
in her quarterfinal with Bolinets,
yes,
her ace count was 10, but her double fault count was 13.
Well, she's learning. She's young.
So the DTM strategy that she adopted needs working on.
Okay.
But she had to leave Ostrava Thursday after losing to Katie Bolinets in Czechoslovakia mid-afternoon.
Right.
And she was on court at 9 o'clock in Doha the next morning.
The transfer, I mean, I did the working out of that all. That is possible. But with transfers, it's tight. I sometimes wonder whether we don't get told, when they say that so-and-so's pulled out or so-and-so's ill, I've never heard them say they missed their flight.
No. So she played the qualifying in Doha, which was Friday, Saturday. So it started Friday, carries on Saturday. I'll explain the qualifying in a little bit more detail. But just to finish the Alicia Parks story, she got on court in Doha and unsurprisingly lost the first set. And then
she didn't have time to tie up her shoelaces, bless her.
I'm thinking, is she going to just kind of bomb it and kind of have a rest? But no, she managed to win that match in 3 sets, and she's won today as well. So she's qualified. And just, giving context in terms of money, what is it worth getting a flight? We've all got a rough idea of how much a 5-6 hour flight might cost from Czechoslovakia to Doha. Well, by touching down in Doha, if she'd lost that first match, she would have taken away $6,000. By winning it on Friday, she got $11,000, and she won her next match. So by getting into the main draw, she's now up to 18.
Okay.
So that flight, probably through the night, or certainly sleeping some on the plane to some degree, earned her the difference between nothing and $18,000.
And clearly some points coming her way.
Yes.
Do you not get any points for qualifying?
If you win matches in qualifying, you get points. Yeah. It's sort of 20 or 30 points, increments of 10 points, but it's more the financial gain is significant. And a lot of
reputation, you're seen as a credible competitor.
Yes, and we've mentioned a few of the more, what I'll call the senior citizens on tour, who are all in their 30s.
Funny visual for me.
They will go to events. Pavlyuchenkova is one at the moment, in her mid-30s, struggling for wins. She's not winning any matches at all at the moment, but she'll go because her ranking gives her direct entry.
Right.
And it's a bit like a year to just take the spoils, regardless of how much she wins in terms of matches. Guaranteed $18,000. So I'm going to go.
Okay. So you should always spend your last year just skiing through the season, having points.
Yes.
And prizes.
So other players to qualify who people will be aware of: Sine Cartel, a British player. She played in Abu Dhabi, lost to the eventual winner in the quarterfinals, a bit like our friend Alicia Parks, but not from Ostrava in Czechoslovakia. Cartel flew from Abu Dhabi to Doha, which is a much shorter flight, but she did that straight off the court, overnight, back on court, 9 o'clock in the morning. And she also had a big, long 3-setter, but got through it, won again today, and has qualified for Doha. So there were...
Does she get a day off any time, June? I mean, does she get to go back to the hotel and unpack a bag or not?
Yeah, she gets hours off in between, but I'm not sure full days off. But that's the life of a tennis player. And it's those players who are in the rankings that are sort of not in the top 40 or not in the top 70 or outside the top 100. There are sort of thresholds where direct entry into either 1,000 event, a 500 event, or 250 event, you're not quite there. You're on the threshold, so you have to qualify. And qualifying works exactly the same as main draw. The next batch of rankings get direct entry into qualifying.
Right.
So there'll be 32 players trying to qualify. They have to win 2 matches. That gets 32 down to 8, and those 8 players are the qualifiers. So you have to win 2 matches in qualifying. Now, this week in Doha, the good news for the qualifiers was that 2 additional players were late withdrawals. So Paula Badosa has pulled out.
Do we know why?
And Belinda Bencic has pulled out, as she did this week in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
And they will either cite illness or injury.
Because as we spoke about last week, the 1,000 tournaments, they are contracted to go to, or a certain proportion of them, quite a high proportion of them. And if they're not ill, they're expected.
So I've just got it here. So Paula Badosa has cited a right hip injury.
Oh, bless her.
Barbora Krejcikova has pulled out with a left knee injury. So those withdrawals could be stated before the deadline. So tournaments have a deadline where if you withdraw beforehand due to illness or injury, that's absolutely fine.
Is that deadline gone now?
And it's it's days before the tournament starts. And then if you're after that, without knowing the precise ins and outs, but apparently the WTA Tour are trying to tighten up and make it harder for players to withdraw very late, etc. But they've decided that there is sort of 4 what they call amnesty withdrawals. So you can use up your 4 amnesty withdrawals, irrespective of the time, obviously before the match starts, but irrespective of the time frame.
Yes.
So after the deadline, you've got 4 allowances, and if you've used those up, then there are penalties, etc. And we talked about deduction of ranking points. And I think some of the players are obviously taking advantage of that. So we'll come on to Doha and the bigger names, who's there, etc.
And for your information, listeners, we're recording this on a Saturday night after the close of play, but before Sunday. So anything may change overnight, of course.
Yes, I suspect Castella, having won in Romania, might want to celebrate and decide not to bother to go to Doha. And being her last year on tour, any penalties would be pretty meaningless for her. And I suspect she hasn't used up any of her 4 amnesty withdrawals anyway. Raducanu has been ill all week. Her own words, we've talked about her. Is she going to go? I suspect she might pull out as well.
Pull out? I'd pull out and climb underneath the duvet with my tissues and watch Notting Hill again.
Oh, I think you could do better than Notting Hill. Isn't Bridgerton coming out again?
Oh, yes, it's just Series 4 just started. You're right. I'd be watching that back to back.
Okay, so we will talk Doha, the first WTA 1000 event, next.
Okay.
Are we doing a jingle there?
We could put a jingle in there. We'll try. Technically, we're trying to get better each week.
Okay, so Katie, who is the defending champion in Doha?
For her first name or her second? Irina Anisimova.
Very close. Amanda Anisimova is the reigning champion. It was her first big title.
Yes.
In her career only 12 months ago.
Just climbed off the tennis numpty first step.
So she is in attendance and she's
defending her points.
And she's defending her title. And she, along with 7 or 8 of the top 10, are in attendance. The 2 big names who have thrown in a withdrawal only before the deadline, I think.
Sabalenka, Paulini.
So it began with P, Pegula.
Yes.
So Sabalenka and Pegula are not playing, and Bencic has pulled out the last 2 tournaments, so she's not playing, and she just crept back inside the top 10. But I don't think she will be now because she hasn't played last week, defending her title in Abu Dhabi, so she will have lost those 500 points. So I suspect just 2 of the top 10 as it stands as of Monday morning. But that leaves all the other names there. So Iga Swiatek is the number 1 seed.
Well, this is actually as of Sunday morning because they've got a day to... Do they start playing tomorrow on Sunday or they start Monday?
They start tomorrow.
Okay.
But the top 8 seeds get a bye.
Right, okay.
So all these top 10 players will have a bye, so they won't be playing till Tuesday or Wednesday.
Finally, a good, solid night's sleep. I'm worried about their sleep.
Hence why the best players get the most advantages afforded to them.
Of course, because the bye means they can have a good...
So they've been on a private jet.
Yeah.
They've had the biggest rest.
Yeah.
They've got the biggest teams. With the exception of Rebecca, they've probably got all the big, the best clothing, the luxuries.
Do you know last week? Last week I was listening to another podcast that was talking about that they were going for, Yonex was going for luxury loungewear or luxury athletics wear, but they ended up with luxury laundry. Really funny phrase they used. But there, yeah, you are.
They used that phrase, or that was how
No, Yonex didn't use that phrase.
their kit was referred to.
That's how it was referred to, and that's just made me laugh. I wasn't the only person who thought that she was in peasant's weeds. Apparently, it is a Yonex Japanese brand. It's a Japanese thing. There's a name for it, which I forget, but it means we're not showy and we're really, the fabric and the material is really good. Didn't look really good, but apparently was good for wicking and it was good for all the other functions of a tennis pair, except for looking quite nice. Yeah. Anyway, let's not go back to that.
Okay, well, Raducanu the number 2 seed. She'll be in her Yonex kit and she'll be playing with her Yonex racket.
Love to see if she goes for
She's coming out and she's number 2 seed. So the reigning champion, Amanda Anisimova, is number 3 seed and she is in the top half. So she's got Iga Swiatek to get past to get to the final. And in the bottom half is Coco Gauff. So Coco Gauff is playing in Doha, as is Mira Andreeva, as is Jasmine Paolini.
All our old friends are back.
So quite an interesting tournament, and it's going to be really interesting to see if Rybakina blitz it, because on form, very similar surface. Doha is hard court, very similar speed. Having watched some of the qualifying, probably not quite as fast as Melbourne, but pretty fast hard court. And so you can expect the big, powerful hitters, assuming they get the ball in more often than they don't.
And over the net.
They're going to be hard to beat.
Interesting. So I like Rybakina for this because obviously I'm obsessed with the travel and the comfort. And I think she's had a week to relax. She's got there slowly. She's probably been put in some better kit, I'm hoping. I will laugh myself silly when I see her popping in her orange Yonex kit, because it does exist. I have seen it. And after some really good night's sleep and a bit of celebrating for her AO win, I'm feeling good for her.
Yeah, it's the only question mark. It's very hard to sort of turn up after a big win and win a game. So back-to-back wins are very rare on the tour, year in, year out in recent times. It does occasionally happen, but obviously the demand on the player once they've won a Grand Slam, everyone wants their time. They're doing multiple press related, social media related events for their sponsors. And I just think it's going to be quite hard for her to be on it this week. She got to the quarterfinals last year. She's got a reasonable draw, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if she lost before the final.
Okay, but I think if I was her sponsor, I would certainly not put so much pressure on her that she was counterproductive for me by not winning. I mean, a sponsor, you want to be a supportive sponsor who helps you to win more, not helps you to sell more your next kit.
Well, she's got a reasonable first couple of matches, but then she could have to play Mboko or Andre in the quarterfinals, Coco Gauff possibly in the semi-final, and Anisimova or Iga Swiatek in the final. And I suspect that Rybakina will be happy to get and match her result from last year. And then mentally, she might tactically take it easy.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean she's going to just lose. But I think when push comes to shove, before the Australian Open, she lost to Makova in a warm-up event. And clearly, come the Australian Open, I would say now that was a bit of a tactical loss. She lost in 3 sets to Makova, but it was as if she wasn't going to bust her gut to win that tournament. She was going to save herself for the Australian Open. And I think if she's pushed in one of these rounds before the final, I think Rybakina might come unstuck. So I would look to the top half, and I think Amanda Anisimova has a very good draw. She's got a couple of easy matches, in my opinion. Then she could play Svitolina in the quarterfinal, who will be tired. She's a mum. I don't think Svitolina will match her performance in the Australian Open at this event. So I can see Anisimova getting through to the semi-finals, and she's got a good record against Iga Swiatek. She knows how to beat her. Although she lost the Wimbledon final, she subsequently beat her twice, and I think she'll beat her for a third time if she gets to play her. So I wouldn't be surprised if Amanda Anisimova gets to the final again and doesn't play Elena Rybakina. So we'll see.
Okay. You heard it here first, dear listener.
So we've got our rankings watch.
We have, and then we want to talk, or I want to talk anyway, just a little bit about our Filipino rocket.
Yes.
Sorry, Filipina rocket.
Yes. We'll save that for the end. So we'll just do some players who've surged up the rankings this
Game,
week.
set, and surge. Who's that going to be this week?
That's right. So the Americans are on the charge a little bit. For those of you that aren't so familiar with some of the names outside of the top echelons, a lady by the name of Hailey Baptiste got through to the semi-finals in Abu Dhabi and pushed Alexandra Eala to 3 close sets. This is the same lady that pushed Coco Gauff to 3 sets in the Australian Open. And unfortunately, she doesn't really like the deciding set. So she had a match point to get into the final of Abu Dhabi. But by getting to the semi-final, she's risen to 38th in the world. Another player with a big serve. So I mentioned Alicia Parks and Hailey Baptiste, 2 of the biggest servers.
Both American.
Both American, but they don't have the consistency or possibly the stamina of someone of Rybakina's class.
Yet.
Emma Raducanu's risen 5 places, so she's now 25th in the world after her run to the final. Katie Boulter, I've mentioned, is back in the top 100. Brianna Castella, the winner.
Have all of them. I thought you were going to have 1 each week.
These 5 are on the...
Doing 5. Okay.
Brianna Castella, 35 years young, is now in the top 32. She's 31, so she'll get a seeding at the French Open as it stands. And the young Sara Bejlek is up to 38.
Bejlek, who did so well in Abu Dhabi.
That's right. She's won 500 points, so she's up 63 places.
So if we're going to name one, I'm going to name Bejlek.
Yes, she's our player.
Can I have her as a player of the week?
She is the player of the week.
Okay, well done, Bejlek.
And rankings reset.
Game, set, and reset.
2 players. Donna Vekic,
dear,
now in danger of falling outside the top 100. She's 97th in the world. She is a player who's been inside the top 50 for the last 5 years, if not longer. So for her to be threatened with losing her place in the top 100 is quite noteworthy. And a young American who burst onto the scene 2 years ago, she's still only 21, a lady called Aisling Kruger, has really struggled the last 6 to 12 months, and she's fallen outside the top 100. She's 101st, and she'd been as high as 29 in the world. So for real tennis aficionados, those 2 names will mean something, and they're both around 100 in the world, which is a big drop for them.
Okay.
Here's someone from a bygone age, really.
Okay, go on.
Ira Zonareva. Let me say this again. Zonareva. Ira Zonareva.
Now, did she lose in the Wimbledon final?
Yes, 16 years ago to Serena Williams. 2010, Ira Zonareva got to the Wimbledon final and as high as number 2 in the world.
And what's she doing now then?
At 41 years of age.
Well done, lady.
I thought she was more of a double specialist.
Yeah.
She was playing doubles and getting to the latter stages in doubles events. But I saw her on the singles court. I sat down to watch some of the qualifying, as I said, yesterday in Doha, and I nearly fell over. 41 years of age, Vera Zonareva, playing one of our friends, Wei Jiang.
Wei Jiang. And did she win?
The Russian won. So she got through to today against Frek, who's been a seed at Grand Slams. Magdalena Frek, a Polish player, who's been in the top 30, and Zonareva went to the head and won again. What's
she been doing other than playing doubles for the last 16 years?
I think staying in and around tennis, but getting married and doing lots of family stuff.
Good woman. Well, how impressive is that? Just have a life and a tennis, and then a bit more tennis, and then a bit more life. And she must have heard about Serena Williams getting a possible invitation to some Grand Slams this year and thought, well, if she's going, I'm going. We can replay the 2010 finals.
Well, we often hear, don't we, Williams has had a few wild cards in the last year or so.
Yeah.
And she's the older sister, so she's over 45. Serena, I looked up, is 44 as we're speaking now. So they're several years on from Vera Zvonareva, but
they also a bit more high profile.
Kind of supports the more mature female tennis player getting entry into events because they are still winning, and she's proved it today. So she's 500th in the world and is in the main draw in Doha this week.
Oh,
so
that's impressive.
If she goes on to win the event,
yeah,
she will be in our rankings watch next week, surging up. But she's in the draw, and she would have to beat Raducanu in the quarterfinals to have any chance of the 1,000 points.
Well, that is just a lovely story to end on.
That's really it. Yes. So we're going to finish with middle of this week. I did a blog. I did 5 to watch, the sort of next generation of players who are under 21, if not teenagers still, who are ranked inside the top 100, who I think are going to continue to rise and push to win titles, if not maybe in the next 5 years, as they get to that peak age between 24 and 28 that we spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
So some have got 5 years to get to that. So they've got to mature, finish growing in some cases. But I think these are players to watch in the sort of medium to long term. And we started with a Filipino player.
Filipina. She's Filipina, and she's called Alexandra Eala.
That's right.
And the wonderful thing about Eala is that she has just the biggest fan base on the planet. If you see press conferences which go on with Alcaraz, has nothing, absolutely nothing compared to Eala's press conferences. I think I heard something like a YouTube press conference. There was 7,000 or 8,000 people watching the Sinner Alcaraz press conference. 17,000.
Wow.
Watching Eala. She is massive in the Philippines. She's gone by, she's the only person who's ever gone into the top 50 in the from the Philippines. She has Matabang spirit. Matabang spirit is when you are strong and courageous and you will do almost anything for your country. And she left it. She's 18 now, 18?
No, she's 20.
She's 20 now, okay. And when she was 14, she left the Philippines for the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. And this was seen as, to leave your beautiful country where you clearly don't ever want to leave because it's so wonderful, but to go to this at such a young age, to go along to play and learn and better yourself. This is the Matabang spirit. And then, of course, what happens is everywhere she plays, all the Filipinos go and watch her and scream for her and wave their flags for her. And she's really good to her fan base. She will spend time with them. She will go and talk with them and sign things and play and video. Her fans are really, really important to her. So she's got huge social media following and traction. She goes everywhere she goes. Her fan base make it a home game for her. In Australia, we said that there was some outside court in Australia, court 17 or something, where they hadn't recognized at the AO that this was going to be a really, really big match for fans. And so they put her on this, court 17, and there were thousands of people queuing to go watch this game. And they hadn't realized that what was going to happen. So that was, I just absolutely loved watching her win. And then I think the big game that she won, which was the day you wrote that blog, wasn't it? And the following day, we kind of knew she was going to lose. A, because she had played this huge game the day before, and she's also playing in the doubles. And B, because the player that she got beaten by was a big player.
Yeah, she got to the quarterfinals. She lost to Alexandra, the number 2 seed. But Eala's in the top 50, as you said, ranked about 40 in the world. She has a great hard court game. Burst on the scene about a year ago, 10 months ago. She beat Iga Swiatek, amongst others, to get to the semi-finals in Miami.
I love that you peel in with the actual facts. carry on, Dan. Tell us all about it.
We started a series on the young players, as I said, and she happened to play that afternoon in the second round in Doha, and she was playing Sasnovich. And the match before literally had 5 men and a dog, etc., and it was an empty stadium.
Yeah.
And then Eala comes on, and the crowd
It's like
descended,
the FA Cup final.
And poor Sasnovich, who's a long-standing tour player, she wasn't getting heckled, but every shot, these Filipino fans, there's no real etiquette. It's just we want Eala to win.
So they're screaming with delight when
she's running around the court and retrieving drop shots or lobs. They're just getting involved in the point, and the point's not even over.
And they scream for the opposition's fault as well, which is sometimes.
So we talked about the hindrance call for, respect of Sabalenka a couple of weeks ago. Well, I felt like the umpire could give a hindrance call to the crowd. But it was a bizarre match, and Eala was 5-1 down in a deciding set, and it was all over. And somehow, the 12th man of the crowd, if you like, he just refused to lose. And we talked about that spirit and the
strength. There's another Filipino word for
determination.
Strength.
And she clawed it all the way back, went to a tiebreak, and she won a thrilling tiebreak. And if the crowd were kind of excited at the start of the match, they just were completely.
Her parents were there, and it was just all so exciting.
It was as if she'd won the biggest tournament of her life.
And then our website absolutely melted because we tweeted to say we've written this blog about Eala, not realizing that sort of 150,000 Filipinos were going to go and read it, which was lovely. And thank you very much if you're listening now.
Yes, well done, Eala. I think she's one to watch.
I've
got 4 more youngsters in mind, but I'm going to have to add Sara Bejlek, our Player of the Week, as she's 20 years of age. So I'm going to make it 6 players.
Okay.
So yes, very exciting times for the women's game, because not only are they emerging talent on the court, some of them have got big fan bases, bigger than some of the established names. I did think that was just wonderful that they were really just going to town with the numbers that the men were having watching them. And so, but I think we need to make a bit more of a fanfare of your Player of the Week. We just gave her a little bit of a fizzle there. Well, yes, she's come out of nowhere, really. So I'm going to obviously do a blog about her and add her to the next generation. So I think she is 20 years of age as well. Meaning, what's her name? Sara Bejlek. Sara Bejlek, Player of the Week. Well done, Sara. Round of applause. Yeah. So in the coming weeks, you can look out for all the details on their strengths and areas for improvement, what makes them such a good player now, but what could make them Grand Slam champions of the future. We're looking in detail at Mboko. We've done this week's blog on Eala. We're going to look at Iva Jovic, Australian. Another Czech lady, Teresa Valentova, who is on the way up. And Mirandreva, not forgetting Mirandreva. She's still just 19, I think. Just coming up 19. So until then, dear listener, do enjoy the tennis. Enjoy Doha. Yes. Hopefully you can find a way of watching it. Yes. And we will try and enjoy the weather when it comes down here in Spain. So thank you very much for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow, ask us questions. We will answer anything you ask us. And thank you very much for listening. Mary, our biggest fan. Bye from me. And bye from me.